your dreams.
Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to another Genshin Impact video, and today I'm just going to talk about Genshin's story. The writing, that's about it. If you like the video, leave a like and subscribe. The writing in Genshin Impact can be hit and miss sometimes. Sometimes it's very good, sometimes it's just god shit awful. The writing team for Genshin seems to be very proud of the work because in the 3rd anniversary of Genshin Impact, they basically bragged about how many words have been in Genshin Impact. And just because they bragged about this many words in their game does not mean that the story or the writing of this game is any good. More words does not make the writing good. In fact, it just makes it even shittier. There is a saying called show, don't tell, and Genshin Impact does not do that. Instead of doing that, they do the exact opposite. They tell instead of showing the shit. The amount of dialogue in this game is so bloated and unnecessary, and the fact that Paimon is as dumb as a fucking pocket pussy does not help the text in this game. I also feel like HoYoverse never adds a skip button to the game because I feel like they want everybody to enjoy their shitty writing. Because let's be real here, if we had the skip button in this game, I don't think any of us, 90% of us would probably even look at the story. The lore in Genshin Impact is actually kind of fire, but the way they present it is not good because all this bloated text does not help the writing whatsoever. Because as I said before, in order to tell a good story, you kind of have to show it instead of just telling us all of it. 90% of the dialogue is basically explaining to Paimon's dumb pocket pussy ass on what's going on. Because she's just so fucking dumb. I can't fucking stand Paimon sometimes. Instead of using her as an emergency food, I would rather just use her as an emergency Ono-hole. Not for pleasure or anything, just out of pure hatred, and just use the fuck out of Paimon. Anyways, the amount of bloating text in this game gets really ridiculous to the point that sometimes you'll see like a black screen full of fucking words describing what is happening. HoYoverse is making all this money and they can't fucking animate like a scene or something. They have to have a black screen full of fucking text to let us know what is happening on screen. Like Genshin's story and writing just feels like a very cheap visual novel sometimes. Like what the fuck? Although they have been adding a little bit more like CGI stuff, or not CGI stuff, but they do add like, you know, certain special screens. Like when Lyney was confronting Wriothesley, they have been adding more of those lately, which is pretty cool. But having a black screen with text is just unnecessary. Maybe just make like a, if they can't make a cutscene, maybe make like a scene kind of similar with Lyney confronting Wriothesley or something. I don't know. I feel like they could just do much more than just having a black screen full of text, which is just another example of HoYoverse telling instead of showing us what's going on. Even Arlecchino gets the fucking Gnosis off screen. They basically had to tell us that she got the Gnosis instead of just showing us on screen, which is kind of weird since Arlecchino is a important character. She's a harbinger after all. They couldn't make a fucking scene of Arlecchino getting the Gnosis. They had to fucking tell us off screen that she got the Gnosis. Anyways, you get the point, right? HoYoverse does a lot of telling instead of showing. Another reason why the writing is bad is probably because of the nature of the game is a gacha game. The point of gacha games is to sell you the characters so you can spend a little money to obtain these characters. So HoYoverse will shield these characters in the Archon quests in order for you to like them, in order for you to have a chance to spend money for them. Sometimes after you finish an Archon quest, you might have a certain urge to pull for the character. Sometimes HoYoverse can do a pretty good job with this. It really just depends on the character. It depends on your preferences. But since HoYoverse has to shield these characters, sometimes the writing can kind of just feel very forced and thus becomes shit. Like Inazuma, for example, Ayaka and Kokomi and Sarah hardly did shit in the Archon quest, but because they are playable characters and HoYoverse had to shield them to you somehow, they basically had to put them in the Inazuma Archon quests. I guess the writing team didn't have any creativity on what to do with these characters since they only showed up for 5 minutes and dipped out. Too much on-screen time can also be very bad because it just feels like the character is forced. Neuvillette is a pretty good example of this. I like Neuvillette, but I really feel like they did way too much sucking him off in the Archon quest. He one-shots Child, he stops the Primordial Sea and the fortress, and by the end of the Archon quest, the man gets a massive power boost, something that he didn't really need. It was definitely a writer that really wanted to suck him off. Oh, and he also saves Navia too, by the way. He just ends up saving all of Fontaine, all honesty. Neuvillette kind of just feels like a Gary Stu. He has no weaknesses. Everyone constantly sucked him off. His character quest was really good. I enjoyed it, but in the Archon quest, I feel like they should have toned the jerking off him a little bit. Maybe just jerked him off a little bit less, but you know, other than that, he's a pretty cool character. In my opinion, I think the world quests are kind of better than the Archon quests. The characters in the world quests are basically NPCs, but they don't really feel forced. They all have their own quirks about them. They don't get too little or too much screen time. It just feels very balanced. Don't get me wrong, the dialogue can be very bloaty, especially in the world quests, but I do think the world quests are just slightly better than the Archon quests. Hell, I would love it if any of the characters from the world quests actually become playable. Having a playable jet, or maybe even a playable caterpillar, that sounds pretty dope. Hell, maybe even a playable Aranara, that would have been pretty cool too. Make them a 4-star or something, I don't know. Archon quests are kind of hit or miss. I mean, there are some parts where they are really good, some parts were just really awful. Monsat's Archon quest was okay. It was very simple. You had a big bad dragon flying around and you had to slay the fucking dragon. Liwei's was pretty shit because you were basically jerking off babysitting Zhongli the whole time. The best part of Liwei's Archon quest was towards the end where, you know, shit was actually brewing. Every character was coming together to battle Osile, which was pretty good. Inazuma's Archon quest was pretty bad. I think they did a war arc too quickly. The only good moments in the Inazuma's Archon quest was whenever Raiden showed up, since she was the antagonist in that Archon quest. Sumeru's Archon quest was really great. A lot of character got enough balance of screen time. The beginning of it was pretty suspenseful since you were trying to figure out why you were constantly looping. I did think the Sumeru Archon quest fell off when Scaramouche shows up because I didn't really like what they did with his character. Fontaine's Archon quest was pretty good. I did think there were some really weird moments in it, like jerking off Neuvillette constantly. The Fortress of Meropide arc kind of felt useless. It's not like the Traveler really did anything in that arc. Neuvillette basically had to show up and, you know, solve everything. I feel like Neuvillette could have been a pretty interesting antagonist in Fontaine, but because HoYoverse has to shill the characters, they can't exactly make the characters too villainy. Otherwise, you know, the CN government might have their ass, because apparently playable characters as villains is not allowed in China. So any antagonistic character would have to have like some redeem arc, like Scaramouche. I don't think Child really did anything redeemable. I guess his character quest, he kind of gets redeemed, sort of. And Raiden's redemption quest was basically the Dango milk. I guess HoYoverse was getting tired of redeeming antagonists as playable characters, since there was really no playable character being an antagonist. Anyways, because HoYoverse has to sell you these characters, the writing kind of has to get sacrificed as a result. The last reason why the writing in Genshin Impact is bad, this is a small reason, but this small reason can lead to really big issues. Well, not issues, but really big things. Remember in the very beginning of the game, the Traveler had this power to cure abyssal shit. The Traveler basically cured Dvalin's tears, or purified Dvalin's tears. I think the HoYoverse writers forgot that, because I don't think the Traveler does anything similar to that ever again. I could be wrong, but that's the only instance I can remember that the Traveler actually does something kind of interesting, and they never really do anything with that ever again. Traveler apparently has the power to purify things, but I don't think they really go off with this. In fact, why couldn't they have the Traveler fix the Primordial Sea issue? Just call the Primordial Sea the Corruption Sea and just have the Traveler fix that shit. That way the Fortress of Meropide arc wouldn't be as useless. The arc was just kind of bad because Neuvillette ends up doing everything, even though Neuvillette was the one that sent us there to begin with. It just feels weird that HoYoverse wrote that in for the Dvalin tier scene and they never really follow up with that ever again. I guess HoYoverse forgot it. Anyways, TLDR, Genshin has too much text, Paimon very stupid. HoYoverse has to sell the characters and that can result in sacrificing the writing. And HoYoverse kind of forgets what they've done in the past and they never really follow up with that. Anyways, that's gonna be the end of this video. If you liked the video, leave a like and subscribe. Do you agree? Do you disagree? How do you feel about Genshin's writing team? Let me know in the comments and I will see you guys later.